Hey guys, welcome back. In my last video, we talked about 3 super important aspects of photography: lighting, composition, and distance from your subject. This week, we're gonna jump into one of those topics, lighting, in much more detail. If you're someone who's just starting out with photography, or maybe you're not at the point where you have a professional camera yet, but you're trying to up your game, whether it's using an iPhone or a point and shoot, this video is gonna be for you. There's thousands of resources out there on lighting. I know it can feel overwhelming, so I'm gonna tell you what I wish I knew when I was first starting in photography. Stick around. You're probably wondering, why is lighting so important? Well, photography literally means drawing with light. Without light, there is no photography, and you cannot take a picture. Without being able to capture the light, it's going to be really challenging to be able to ever tell a story with the pictures that you take. You're telling a story no matter what it is. And the way you use the light that you have available to you is going to help you tell that story. The same way a set designer might paint something darker or lighter depending on the mood they want to evoke in a movie that they're shooting, the light you use in your photography is going to completely alter the way that you take pictures. If you can harness light in your pictures, you are going to significantly improve your photography game. There are 3 aspects to lighting that are really important to understand when you're first getting started. The first is the color of the light. The second is the intensity of the light. And the third is the direction of the light. All 3 of these things are going to be extremely important in helping you figure out how to set up to take a great picture. So the first thing I mentioned is the color. Indoor lights, very different color than the sunlight. Outdoors, if you're taking pictures outside. So already huge difference if you're shooting indoors versus outdoors. Indoor lights tend to give a more warm, yellowy cast to skin tones unless you're in fluorescent lighting, which can be very white and very bright and wash people's skin tones out. Versus outdoors, you're going to get a little bit more of a natural look. It's what we're used to seeing on people's skin tones, but that can also vary widely depending on where the sun is positioned in the day, whether it's lunchtime and you're getting an overhead light that's a little more white, or we're closer to sunset and we're getting into golden hour where tones are going to be very warm and very rich and very gold. So that's the first thing to think about, is the color of the light. The second thing we want to think about is the intensity of the light. So again, this is going to vary a little bit less indoors unless you're in like a studio setup where you're controlling all the lights, but generally you're going to have slightly dimmer lights inside than outside. So you're going to have to work with that in mind. And then additionally, the intensity of the lights is going to vary whether you have something like a ring light, like I'm shooting this video with a ring light right now, or you have something like overhead lighting to work with. So the intensity is going to be a little more diffuse depending on how high the ceiling is. So as you can see, there's a lot of factors to consider with intensity, and you really need to scope out your surroundings to understand where the intensity of the light is coming from inside, equally to outside. If you're shooting outside and it's bright sunlight, midday, no clouds in the sky, you're going to have really intense light, and you're going to have to adjust camera settings to compensate for that really intense light. Whereas if it is overcast or if it's dusk or dawn and the light is a little more diffuse, a little less intense, that generally is considered a little easier for most photographers to take good pictures. It's more flattering for skin tones, a little more predictable. But you also are going to have to make some changes to how you are shooting the picture to make sure that your subject looks really good in whatever lighting comes across, depending on the intensity. And then the third thing we're going to talk about today is the angle of that lighting, the direction it's coming from. So again, this can vary widely depending on if you're indoors or outdoors. We've talked about using a ring light versus overhead lighting. Overhead lighting, just not super flattering for people. It might work for something like a product shoot, or if you're just shooting the interior of a house, but if you're shooting a model and you have only overhead lighting, it's going to cast some really weird shadows. So that's what we need to think about. Depending on the direction of the light, you're going to get very different shadow placement and very different illumination of the subject. So using something like a ring light or studio lighting can be very helpful to control lighting in an indoor space. Even in an outdoor space, you can use some of those techniques. We've all seen those pictures of influencers out in the wild with their ring lights. There's a reason they're doing that. It makes them look a lot better. It makes the shots a lot cleaner. It makes their skin tones a lot more even and gets rid of any unpredictable shadows that might be cast from any light sources that you're encountering out there in the wild. Just some examples to give you guys of how you might think about shooting outside with all 3 of these concepts in mind: color, intensity, and direction. I was shooting a wedding recently where we had to run out at golden hour to take some pictures of the family. Well, the light was super intense. it was very orange because that time of day, the light tends to get more orangey, giving really warm skin tones, which is not flattering on everybody. In this case, instead of dealing with all of this orange lighting and post-processing, the easiest thing for us to do was actually to move into the shade. There was enough light so that we could move into the shade and still have decently illuminated faces, illuminated bodies. Everything you want in that shot is going to be lit up, and then you can up that in post-processing. So we avoided the orange light by moving into the shade. We also avoided the direct harsh sunlight you can get on people's faces and having to use a trick like shooting backlit, which is something I'll talk about in a later video. So our easiest option was to move into the shadows. So if we take a look at these three aspects we've talked about, one, we dealt with the color of the light by removing the orange hues from direct sunlight. Two, we dealt with the intensity of the light by, again, moving out of the direct sunlight. You don't have to deal with such strong light and such strong shadows. And three, we dealt with the direction of the light because it was coming right on people's faces, and that was giving a very overlit look to their faces. So we moved into the shade and we eliminated that as a variable in the equation. Hopefully this has been a helpful video for you today. Just to recap, we talked about the three aspects of lighting that are super important to understand if you want to have a good, strong base in your knowledge of lighting when it comes to photography. So think about these three things as you start to go out into the world and take pictures of things. How strong is that light? What color is it? What direction is it coming from? These are three things that are really going to up your game if you can figure out how to master them, no matter whether you're shooting with an iPhone or you're shooting with a professional grade camera. Leave a note in the comments to tell me your thoughts, if these tips were helpful, or if you guys have questions so I can make some future videos for you guys on other topics that you might need help with. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.